Good evening. I'm Haylee Ficuciello for Englebrook Independent News. After talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, I figured I should touch on this story too. Tonight, we ask questions Democrats, activist groups, and the professional outrage industries never seem to be interested in answering honestly. Where is Mahmoud Khalil today? Because for nearly 2 years, the political left transformed Mahmoud Khalil into a media celebrity, a campus revolutionary, and the latest victim in America's never-ending progressive protest theater. But behind the slogans, the TikTok activisms, the Ivy League megaphones, and the carefully curated cable news narratives, there is a complicated story involving immigration scrutiny, alleged omission on federal immigration paperwork, anti-Israel protests that spiraled into chaos on Columbia University, and a growing question about whether the United States government will ultimately deport him. And somehow, despite all of that, the New York City mayor figure, Zohran Mamdani, and Progressive Democratic still found time to celebrate Eid al-Fitr along with him while portraying him as a political material. If you occupy a college campus, lead anti-Israel demonstrations, and become the center of federal immigration battle, you are not condemned. You are invited to dinner. The timeline begins in Syria. Mahmoud Khalil was reportedly born and raised in Palestine refugee camp in Syria before eventually relocating to Lebanon. Public reports indicate he later worked in Beirut and spent time connected to international organization and diplomatic institutions, including work associated with British Embassy in Beirut. Federal court filings later alleged that Khalil failed to disclose several significant affiliations during the immigration process, including alleged ties to United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, commonly known as UNRWA. Now, why does this matter? Because UNRWA became the subject of international controversy after allegations surfaced that some agency employees participated in the assistance Hamas-linked activities connected to October 7, 2023 terrorist attack against Israel. Multiple countries reportedly paused fundings, investigations in the organization after those allegations emerged. And yet, Democrats and activist groups largely treated the question about Khalil's alleged connection as somehow off limits. Apparently, asking questions is now hate speech. Khalil later arrived in the United States and enrolled at Columbia University in New York City. By 2024, he had become one of the most visible negotiators and spokespersons tied to Columbia University's anti-Israel protest movement during the Gaza war. The protests quickly escalated into massive encampments, building occupations, confrontation with police, allegations of intimidation against Jewish students, and national political controversy. Critics accused protest organizations of fostering an open hostility environment on a campus. Jewish students reported feeling threatened. University operations were disrupted. Graduates were overwhelmed. Police were ultimately forced to intervene. But to progressive activism, this was all apparently just peaceful resistance. You know, the kind of peaceful protests that require barricades, mass demonstrators, building takeovers, and NYPD tactical units. Khalil emerged as one of the public faces of the demonstration. He frequently spoke to media outlets, negotiated with Columbia administrators, and became deeply associated with the student encampment movement demanding divestment for Israel. Federal officials later argued that some protest activities and rhetoric connected to the demonstration aligned with extremist narratives supporting Hamas. Khalil himself denied supporting terrorism and repeatedly framed his as opposition to the war in Gaza. Still, the controversy surrounding the protests only intensified. Then came March 2025. This is when federal immigration authorities moved in. According to multiple reports, immigration and custom enforcement agents detained Khalil at his Columbia-affiliated apartment building in New York City. The arrest immediately ignited political firestorm. Progressive Democrats erupted in outrage. Activists claimed authoritarianism. Cable news panels acted as democracy itself was collapsing. And social media transformed Khalil into the latest anti-Trump resistant icon almost overnight. But here's the part many media outlets conveniently minimize. The federal government alleged Khalil omitted key information during his immigration and green card application process. Those allegations reportedly included failing to disclose alleged association with UNRWA, failing to fully disclose prior employment connections, failing to disclose affiliations tied to activist organizations. Now, federal immigration paperwork is not optional. The United States government takes omission and misrepresentation on visa and residency applications seriously. At least they used to. But in today's political climate, enforcing immigration laws suddenly becomes controversial the moment individuals involving align with progressive activism. Had Mahmoud Khalil attended a Trump rally wearing a MAGA hat instead of leading an anti-Israel protest at Columbia University, many of the same Democrats currently defending him would probably demand deportation before sunrise. Detained in Louisiana following his arrest, Khalil was transferred to the LaSalle Detention Center in Jena, Louisiana. The detention became national news. Activist groups organized demonstrations demanding his release. Civil rights organizations accused the federal government of targeting protected political speech. Supporters argued that the administration was attempting to silence pro-Palestine activisms. Meanwhile, federal authorities maintained that the case centered on immigration law and alleged misrepresentation during the residency process. Court battles soon followed. Federal judge weighed questions involving immigration authority, free speech protection, and whether the federal government possessed the authority to revoke Khalil's immigration status. Khalil's legal team argued the government was retaliating against political activism. The government argued national interests and immigration law enforcement justified the proceeding. And while activists portrayed his political prisoner, critics questioned why the media refused to scrutinize his alleged omission and affiliation with the same intensity that applied to conservatives, because applying immigration enforcement only matters when Democrats approve of it. As the legal fight continues, prominent progressive politicians and activist groups publicly rallied around Khalil. Congressional progressives condemned the detention. Student activist organizations elevated him into a symbol of anti-Israel campaign resistance, and eventually, Khalil appeared publicly alongside Zohran Madani, the Democratic Socialist political figure who became one of the most controversial faces in New York City's politics. Photos and public appearance connected to the celebration and activist events involving Madani and other progressive allies. Critics of Madami have repeatedly accused him of minimizing anti-Semitism concerns while aggressively aligning himself with anti-Israel activism movements. Madami has denied accusations of anti-Semitism and has framed his position as an advocacy of Palestine rights. Still, the optics were extraordinary. A man detained by federal immigration authorities after leading an anti-Israel protest at Columbia University was now being embraced by a progressive political figure in New York City. Only in modern politics can detention by ICE become a network opportunity. So where is Mahmoud Khalil today? As of 2026, Mahmoud Khalil continues fighting deportation processes while remaining on one of the most recognized faces connected to Columbia University anti-Israel protest movement. Reports indicate that he was released from detention while legal battles over his immigration status and deportation proceedings continue moving through federal courts and immigration channels. The Trump administration and federal immigration officials continue arguing the alleged omission of his immigration filings just removal proceedings. Khalil and his legal team continue denying wrongdoing, and progressive activists continue to portray him as a symbol of political persecution. But millions of Americans are asking a different question. If federal authorities believe material information was omitted during the immigration progress, and if the government believes immigration law violations occurred, why was this process taking so long? Because for everyday Americans watching from home, this case increasingly represents something larger. Two systems, two standards, one for politically connected activists, another for everybody else. The Mahmoud Khalil saga is not just about one activist, it's about the collision between immigration law, campus radicalism, progressive politics, and the growing refusal of many Democratic leaders to condemn extremist rhetoric when it comes wrapped in the language of activism. It's about political culture that treats anti-Israel encampments as social justice movements while dismissing legitimate concerns for as Jewish students as political inconvenient. And it is about whether immigration law will actually be enforced consistently, regardless of the ideology. For now, Mahmoud Khalil remains in the United States. The court battle continues. The protests continue, the political theater continue, and Democrats continue to insist Americans should not believe what they watch unfold with their own eyes on college campuses across the country. But one question still hangs over the entire story. Will Mahmoud Khalil ultimately be removed from the United States? That may determine the far more than what the future of one activist. It may determine whether immigration law in America still means anything at all. For Englebrook Independent News, I'm Haylee Ficuciello. Good night.